Hello everyone. It's really happy to be right here today and to see every one of you gathering right here for the TED event. It's been 4 years actually since I graduated from University of Nottingham right here. Coming back here I feel really familiar looking at the clock tower. It's very nice looking at the lake, and I must say that this part of life when I'm in university is actually the most memorable part, because it's where I met lifelong friends. This is where I met like-minded people. It's also where I met some of the very great people who's doing great things right now, making a difference in the world, just like many of you in the future. I'm not saying this just because it's very cliche to say this, but I truly believe that everyone, a single individual in this world, is able to make a difference and has the power to change the world. But there's one catch, is that many of my friends who are right now doing great things, and not because they choose to do what other people told them to do. It's because they dare to be unusual, they dare to step out of their comfort zones and choose the road less traveled. And going back to my life in the university, it's very memorable, I know, but it's also a very important time of my life, because a lot of things that happens in the university really shaped my ideas and my thoughts. And one of the things that I was heavily involved back in my university days is I was in this charity-based organization, society. It's called the A Society. And with this society, I've done a lot of, let's just say, a lot of volunteer activities, going to orphanages, going to as a volunteers to nearby schools to teach the students. And of course, this is one of the activities that I've done. This is to raise awareness and also raise funds for cancer research. And through this society, I learned to really to give back to the less privileged. And of course, during my university days as a student, I was getting more and more political aware, and really drawn to some of this social and political movement. And one of it is actually the birthday rally, and where I was there with my friends to really be there and to fight for freedom in human rights, freedom in speech, and freedom to have a fair voting system in Malaysia. And that makes me realize that I can't really depend my future anymore in any government, in any political party. That I feel that I have to do something myself. And of course, at the same time, when all these things happen, there's also a new business idea back in Malaysia. Back then, it's called social entrepreneurship. It essentially means that you are using a startup idea to really develop, to really fund and improve culture, social as well as environmental issues. And this, I would like to highlight this, one of this project that was done by a few Malaysians. It's called the Epic Homes program. What they actually do is they will get money from corporates, and then they use that fund to help to build homes for the indigenous people, orang asli. And I was really inspired by them. And I think that, and seeing the work that they do, I get a feeling that pretty sure this is something that I really wanted to do when I was graduated or in the future. So I found this, when having all these thoughts, having all these ideas in my brain, I found this NGO back when I was in my final year. It's an NGO called Teach For Malaysia. So what Teach For Malaysia actually do is an NGO that with a mission, they are driven by the mission to end education inequity by providing excellent education and opportunity to all children in Malaysia. And they run actually this Teach For Malaysia fellowship program. It's a 2 years leadership development program that recruits young professionals that's not from education background to go into high-need schools, high-need community to teach, to be a teacher, and to learn how to give back to the community. So I was encouraged by my friends, by my lecturers, to really try this program out, because essentially it also offers me to two things that I exactly wanted to do. Number one is to give back to the community, to really do some nation building for our country. And the second thing is to learn how to be a leader in social change. So I applied. I have to go through a series of assessments, and I was accepted into the program. And I have to go through a 12 weeks intensive program where they will equip us with the necessary skills and pedagogical skills and knowledge to be a teacher, going to the teacher to teach. And through this process of the applications, I slowly realized that I was stepping into a role that I would never expect myself to be. I was a teacher. Yeah, so this is one of the lessons I'm trying to do, like Harry Potter with my students. So I was posted to a place called Miri in Sarawak. It's very near to Brunei, and it's a very interesting place. They call it the oil town because they were famous for two things, of their oil and gas industries and their palm oil industries. And because of that, it brings a very interesting mix of community in that city, because you have extremely wealthy people living there because they own some of this oil and gas and palm oil company. And you also, in the other extremes, you have families who are living in extreme poverty because these people who comes from, let's just say, the rural area in Sarawak, they will come into the city to really find jobs, and hopefully they're able to provide a better future for their children or their families back home in the way rural area in Sarawak. So of course, as expectedly, I was posted in the school in a low-income community in Miri. And I was assigned to teach history for my, let's just say, age 13 to 14 kids. And I was thinking, history. I feel pretty confident because I get to know some of the tips and formulas that's able to help me score history. And I have really confident to say I'm able to help my students to achieve good grades in history subjects. And I actually think I've never been so wrong. I soon realized that a lot of my students, within the first few weeks of teaching, I realized that a lot of my students, they are not able to write proper sentences. They are not able to read. They are not able to pronounce words correctly. And some of them, they couldn't even understand a single word in a textbook because the literacy level is so low. And I have to spend a lot of time in the class. Instead of teaching history, I have to teach them, so that the history syllabus is in BM, I have to teach them BM all over again. And I realize I'm going nowhere with my history syllabus. And while struggling with students who are not paying attention, sleeping in class, I felt a bit lost. That why am I here? I'm supposed to be here to guide students to have achieved an excellent education. And why am I here? Am I really doing the right thing for my students? And there's this one class, this one lesson that was teaching my students. It entirely changed my perspective in education. So there was a class about British colonization, its history of Malaysia, how the British used to colonize Malaysia by focusing on 3 maritime states, which is Singapore, Malacca, Penang. And I would get my students to really try to label, it's easy, right, to label where is this location of these three places. It's pretty famous, all right? If I ask all of you, I'm pretty confident that 80% of you would probably tell me the right answer, that probably Singapore is below Malaysia, where Johor, it's near Johor, and then you have Penang Island, which is famous for their food. It's somewhere in the north. And Malacca is, I'm not sure, some of them, I don't know, maybe in the middle of Malaysia. And to my surprise, 80% of my students don't know where these places are. They have been in schools for the past 6 years. They have learned about all these places, but they know that So this could be some of the examples of the answers. So they would think that Singapore is up above in Malaysia where Thailand is. They would think that Malacca is maybe somewhere in the middle of the South China Sea. And for Penang, probably in Singapore. And I'm pretty dumbfounded by the answers that they gave me. That aren't this place famous? Right? You have Singapore, who has the Malayan, you have the Malacca, who has the Red Church, you have the Penang Bridge. Pretty famous for people, and especially for Malaysians. You will definitely know all these places. And I have a chat with a few of my students that why do you not know all these places? It's pretty famous and you should know. And the answer they told me changed my perspective. I found that a lot of these students, of course, they were from low-income community. Many of them hasn't really left the small town Miri, and they would never imagine in their lifetime they will also leave Sarawak. And all these places that I mentioned probably means nothing to them. And because of that, I discovered that I really need to change my teaching approach. I realized that I'm not teaching something relevant to them. And I just decided I have to do something that's relevant to them. I have to do something that's challenging their perspective, to make it fun as well. And at the same time, to really inspire them to dream bigger, not just this place where you live, but also other places as well. So I started to change my teaching approach. I started with crowdsourcing to get projector for a school, because all the projectors in the school is broken. So what I do is, so I developed a golden rule for myself. When I go into the classroom every time, I have to make sure that my learning for my students has to be relevant, and at the same time it has to be challenging in a fun way. So I brought a projector. I bought a projector from the fund that I collected from my friends, and some of my university friends as well. They were really kind and generous, so they crowdsourced and crowdfunded, and they bought me a projector. I brought it into class. I started showing my students some of the videos, some of the pictures in KL, in Penang, and also started showing them some pictures of my days in universities and some videos as well, just to inspire them to dream bigger. And I also included some of the like puzzles or games to really excite them. And I have sometimes simulation as well. There's a picture on the left bottom corner on my left. So it's about simulation on financial literacy, where they really get to buy some of the things right there on the table. And I also invited some of the guest speakers all the way from, this is one of the guest speakers from Sunway University, to talk about university life, to re-inspire my students as well, to dream bigger, right? To also put their shoes some days in, maybe one day they are able to go into university as well. And I have a short clip right here after this to show you about some of the activities in the class. I'm not sure I'm able to play this video, but before that, this is the lessons that I co-teach with my colleague. And some of the background of these students they are actually from the removed classes. They are people who struggled with their literacy level. And early of the year, there were a bunch of students who are quite shy, and because of the language barrier, they're quite shy, they're not willing to be invested in the classroom. And this is a lessons that I was co-teach with my colleagues at almost the end of the year. And I would like to show you this video. And this is one of the activities of online quizzes that I tried to use in the classroom. And you can see all the students around them, even though they are not participating in the activity, they are really invested on what's happening. And that's one of the lessons I get from my Teach For Malaysia experience. And of course, there are many lessons that I'm able to get to learn. And as a teacher, of course, most of the time I was teaching my students. And I think that actually my students taught me a lot more as well. And one of the great lessons that I learned from my students is about leadership. And as a teacher, I find myself sometimes being a leader of my students. And that's one lesson that I learned is the leader's main job is to make themselves obsolete. And this is probably one of my proudest moments as a teacher. As you can see some of the students standing right in front of the classroom, they're actually leading the lessons themselves as teachers. Instead of I doing it, I'm doing teaching. So as you can really see these few group students who were initially very shy at the beginning of the year, and through the facilitation and guidance, they're right now in front teaching their classmates, their peers, and you can see that the class is very engaging as well. They were trying to challenge the teacher friend right in front of the classroom. And that's where I make myself obsolete as a teacher. And the second biggest lesson I get from my students is what West Malaysians, which is myself, are able to learn from the East Malaysians. And this is one of the pictures that I captured. This is my class. You can see that there are different. It's during the Malaysian Day celebration. It's a very big day in the school because the students are able to dress in a traditional costume. And you can see that there are at least 20 types of traditional costume in the room. And there are a very diverse group of people in Sarawak. There are roughly about 40 over ethnic groups and with 20 over languages. And they are very diverse. And in this classroom itself, there are at least 20 ethnic groups, and they don't see each other as different human beings. They see each other as friends, regardless of their cultural differences, their background, or even their religion differences. And that's, I think, is something that a lot of West Malaysians should learn from them. And there's this picture that my students asked me to take as well. So, through these 2 years of Teach For Malaysia experience, I found a passion in education, and my passion is to really make learning fun. Not just for kids, as well as for adults as well. I'm currently in a management consultancy company called They help to transform organizations and also help to develop leaders and management team through an approach called experiential learning, which means that they would use things like board games, digital games, sometimes AR and VR technologies in their approach of learning. And at the same time, I also, with a few other colleagues in Teach For Malaysia, I also co-founded a company called Classroom Adventures, where we develop serious games, serious games or applied games as actually using of games for a primary purpose, usually educational, other than its entertainment purposes. So one of the games that we developed is called TEDxUoNMalaysia Live, which is a game that helps people to be in the shoes of a Malaysian teacher and to really understand the challenges in their daily life as well. So we have this game, and you can see we have a good supporter, which is at the corner is YB Hon Kian Ming. He's one of the member of parliament in Malaysia right now, which he bought the game about 2 months ago. And through all this experience I have, I learned one amazing things that I'd like to share with you. That changing the world sometimes is very difficult, and I experienced it firsthand myself. So a lot of times when I was a teacher, I was really depressed as well because of the challenges that I face, and it's really tough. It's a very long journey. But one thing I learned is that you don't really need to change the whole world. You don't really need to be a superhero like this guy right here. All you need to do is just change the world that you have control with. And that starts with changing yourself. And if in the coming future, you are given with opportunities, always try to pick the most challenging one, because in the most challenging experience, you will discover your weakness for sure, and you're of course able to build your strengths. And usually the most challenging experience is the most rewarding one as well. And I hope that through this challenging experience that you've been through, that you're going to go through, you are able to find your calling. I hope that you are able to find your purpose and you are able to find your superpower to change the world. And before I leave the stage, I'd like to share with you one quote that I always share with my students. That is, learning always begins when you are at the end of your comfort zone. Thank you.